This is Gretchen Menn with acoustic guitar, and in this lesson we're going to be talking about intervals and chords. So like many guitar players, a lot of us started by first just learning some open chords. And that's a great place to start because that's one of the things the guitar does so well, is in addition to being able to deliver all sorts of options melodically, we have so many great rhythmic and harmonic options. We get full 6 voices in a lot of cases if we use all of the strings, and even the limited, very easy to reach voicings with 4 notes is plenty for most harmonic purposes. So by neglecting chords, you neglect one of the greatest strengths of your instrument. So now let's get into the problem. By memorizing chord shapes, we ultimately limit ourselves because we don't necessarily have a fundamental understanding of what chords are or how they're built, meaning you learn a shape and that's all you get from that shape. But by investing the time to actually understand chords, the theory behind them, and other applications for how we can see them on the fretboard, you open up the whole world. So full disclosure, this is going to be a very dense lesson. But if you've been following the series this far, I have total and complete faith you will be okay. I will just tell you, do not be afraid to reread, to rewatch, and to take some time to digest the information. I would be very surprised if this all sinks in unless it's review for you. So there's no shame in reviewing and really taking the time to understand it. So before we get into chords, we're first going to look at their building blocks, and those are called intervals. Intervals represent the spaces between notes. Harmonic intervals are notes that are played simultaneously, and melodic intervals are notes that are played in succession. So harmonic interval, melodic interval. Looking at example 1, we can see the different types of intervals. You have unison, which is 2 notes played simultaneously, a second, which is notes that are right next to each other, and then moving upward, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and octave. You can see them notated on the staff in example 1. Intervals can have any one of 5 different qualities. They can be major, minor, augmented, diminished, or perfect. We're going to look at these in context. So let's use the familiar major and natural minor scales as a way of seeing the intervals in context. Looking at examples 2 and 3, the keys of C major and C minor respectively, notice that the perfect intervals are the same in both the major and the minor modes. So the unison, also abbreviated as P1, the perfect 4th, or P4, the perfect 5th, also abbreviated P5, and the octave, P8. So for the perfect intervals, if you raise a perfect interval by a half a step or expand it by half a step, it becomes an augmented interval. So for example, C to G sharp would be an augmented 5th. And conversely, if you condense it by a half step, like C to G flat, it becomes a diminished interval, so a diminished 5th. The same is true for all perfect intervals. So the major and minor intervals are the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th. Both major and minor scales have a major second. You can see that looking at both examples 2 and 3, that C to D is in both the major and the minor scales. What you will notice is that the 3rd, 6th, and 7th scale degrees are different. So a major interval lowered by a half step becomes minor, and a minor interval raised by a half step becomes major. So that means in addition to being able to form a minor scale by just knowing the pattern of half and whole steps, another way you can do it is take your familiar major scale and simply lower your 3rd, 6th, and 7th scale degree, and that's your natural minor scale. It's just another way of thinking about it. And then finally, if you compress a minor interval by a half step, it becomes diminished. And if you raise a major interval by a half step or you expand it by a half step, it becomes augmented. So not because it's going to be useful in terms of guitar playing, but just so you can see and hear these a little, I'm going to go through and actually show you examples 2 and 3 and these intervals on the guitar. So we have a C. We're going to have to stretch all the way down to the 3rd fret of the A string to have that be your perfect prime. So this is example 2. So we have perfect prime, major 2nd, C to D, major 3rd, C to E, your perfect 4th, your perfect 5th, 6th, 7th, octave. So for the minor, you have your perfect prime, major 2nd, minor 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, minor sixth, minor seventh, an octave. So again, I'm not encouraging you to go and play all of these intervals across the neck. It's just so you can kind of hear them, you can see them, and ultimately these will lead to understanding chords a little bit better and coming up with fingerings that are actually useful. Something else to know is that intervals can be inverted, meaning the top and the lower note can switch places. Look at example 4. A way to quickly calculate the new interval that results when inverting an interval is to subtract the original interval number from the number 9 and then flip the quality. So major becomes minor, minor becomes major, perfect remains perfect, and augmented becomes diminished, and vice versa. So for example, a minor second becomes a major seventh. So you have 9 minus 2, your interval becomes 7, and then you flip the quality, minor becomes major. So again, not because it's a great guitar exercise, but just for understanding the neck, the way you can look at it is, okay, so we have C and D for a second, right? So we have a major second. Now we're going to take that C and we're going to find the C an octave above, we're going to have it here. So we have a major second now becomes a minor seventh. And now we're going to go a minor second, so we have a very dissonant interval. So we have that C and that D flat. Again, finding that C above. So it's the same two notes, but now we have minor second becomes major seventh. Similarly, if we wanted to do a minor third, so we have C to E flat here, we reverse the notes. We have our C becomes above E flat. So we'll have a minor third, now becomes a major sixth. And likewise, a major third, C to E, becomes a minor sixth. And a perfect fourth, so C to F, becomes a perfect fifth. So now let's look at chords in their most fundamental form, and that would be triads. So as the name implies, they're made up of 3 notes, a root, a third, and a fifth. A triad can be major, minor, augmented, or diminished, and its intervallic structure determines which one. Check out example 5 to see the differences. So a major triad has a major third and a perfect fifth, whereas a minor triad has a minor third and a perfect fifth. An augmented triad has a major third and an augmented fifth, and a diminished triad has a minor third and a diminished fifth. So the way that would look, again, not to shed on your guitar with it, but let's go ahead and look. We have a root. We're going up from C. We're going to first build a major chord or a major triad. So we have C. We're going to go up to the third, which is E, and now the fifth, which is G, the perfect fifth. So you have, there's your major third and a perfect fifth. So that's a major chord. Now, if you want to make that minor, you just have to move the E down to E flat. So instead of having a major third, you have a minor third. And now you have a minor third up from the root, and that perfect fifth stays the same. So a C minor is your minor chord. Now, if you want to make that diminished, you're going to take your fifth, in this case the G, and you're going to move it down a half step to, so you have C, E flat, G flat for your diminished. Now, if we want to go augmented, I suggest you go back to your major chord, C, E, and G. Now move that G, or your fifth, up a half step. And that's augmented. So these, I'm really trying to get you to think in terms of intervals. Major third, perfect fifth, minor third, perfect fifth, minor third, diminished fifth, major third, augmented fifth. So I know we kind of breezed through that quickly, and I want to take you now through the steps. So let's go ahead and take a look at example 6. What I want you to do is to write out, or at least look at, the C major scale. First, find the root, and then a major third above the root. So take a moment to see it both as the third degree of C major as well as an interval. So a major third. A major third is 2 whole steps. So C, you go up a whole step to D, and then another whole step up to E, which is our major third, which is the third scale degree in the key of C major. It's important to think of all of these things. So don't think that you have to only pay attention to scale degrees or to intervals. Think of all of them simultaneously. They'll reinforce each other and they'll help you when you try to apply them in different places. Now we need to get our fifth for our C major triad. So scale degree 5 in a major or minor scale is a perfect fifth up from your root. So that gives us G, the fifth scale degree, as the fifth of the tonic chord of C major. So considering it in terms of intervals, a perfect fifth is a major third plus a minor third, or also a minor third plus a major third. Here it's a little bit easier to see the major third plus a minor third because that falls in line with the scale degrees of a C major scale. So our C major triad, C, E, and G. So as I sort of showed you in example 5, now for example 7, A through D, we're going to go through this in a little bit more detail. So we first spelled out a C major triad. So C, a third of E, and G. So if you want to take a minute to sketch out a C minor scale, please do so. Or you can try to do it in your head. Or you can take your C major scale and remember to lower the third, the sixth, and seventh scale degree. So we have a C major. We're going to take our third scale degree, which is E, and we're going to lower it to an E flat. And now we have a C minor triad. Taking that one step further, should you want to make it diminished, we already have our minor third between our root and our third, but now we want to make the fifth, so the interval between the root and the fifth scale degree, diminished. So right now, this is a perfect fifth. It's C to G, which is going to be the same in both C major and minor, and we're going to just lower it a half step. And so you now have C diminished. Now for example 7D, if we want to make an augmented chord, we need a major third, C to E, and then E, another major third, to G sharp for a C augmented chord. So for most of us, the most applicable chords are major and minor. Maybe we'll have a diminished here and there or an augmented if we're feeling really fancy, but it's good to know they exist and then you can decide how much you're going to actually use them. So we are going to start now with exploring some of the different ways of playing C major chords. So let's check out example 8. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to start in the open position and we're going to look at the notes of C major and we're going to find them and build them all the way up the neck. So if you check out the first chord voicing, voicing is another way of saying just the different ways in which the notes are stacked. As long as you have the notes C, E, and G, it's a C major chord. It doesn't matter what note is on the top or what note's on the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to start in the open position and we're going to be using only the top 4 strings for now. You can extend the exercise as you see fit, but this is where we're going to be starting. And we're going to start with the D string, and we're going to find in the open position the first note that is a note in the triad of C major. So if you go up, you find your E, which is your third. Then we go to the G string. G is the fifth of C, so we got it there. On the B string, we have our root, which is C, and then we have our open E string. So there's a C major chord. You might notice that it looks a lot like your typical open C major chord. But it's funny how by omitting that root, at least initially, it can look unfamiliar. So there we have a C major chord in the open position. So from here, that's another C major. This time we have our fifth on the top note. We're going to take our fifth and we're going to kind of shift everything up from there. So I'm going to replace my first finger, and now you can see that we can put a G right there, a C here, and an E there, and we have another way of playing C major. Anytime you see fingers stacked like that, it kind of cries out for a bar chord is the next one. So try barring at your 5th fret now, and then seeing where you can find a note on the E string. So we already know those are all C major, right? We have our we have G, C, and E. And then right there, we have C. So there's another C major, this time with the root on top. Now we're going to replace that pinky with the first finger. There's your fifth right there of G. There's your third of E. There's C. There's another C. So working our way up, I'm going to put my first finger on that C. I'm going to put my second finger on the G, my fourth finger on the C, and my third finger on the E. This is a chord that a lot of people get scared of, and I think it's just because I have really skinny fingers that it looks like a bigger stretch than it is. You do want to make sure that your thumb position is neither collapsed nor, flattened in any way. If your thumb's in a good position, it should be no problem to reach that chord, even on the lower frets too. So there's your C major with your third on top. Now we're back to the 12th fret, and we started with the same chord. And you can continue to work your way up the neck as your fret reach allows. So now your assignment, should you choose to accept it, and you should, is to take all of these C major forms and convert them to minor. So you already have a head start because you know how it works. You just have to find those thirds, and you need to move them down from E to E flat. So go through it all. It's going to require some thinking, some full engagement, some refingering. Try it out, and once you've done that, try moving them to different keys. So good luck with it. Be patient. Take your time. And your future self with great chord fluency will thank you.